And we are live.
From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American Read.
Vibrator is cheer perversity.
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes. That's our official motto.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Read Factory podcast. This is Nathan.
This is Conlon.
And we're here tonight. Another exciting show. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world again. A lot of crazy weather shit going on. It's cold.
Yeah, it's been -8 for the past 2 weeks here.
Yeah, you've been way colder than I have been.
I mean, it's no, because we haven't really had that polar vortex like we've had the last couple of years. That's awful, but it only lasts a couple of days. But this is like 2 weeks of -8, which is like fine. That happens in Iowa, but it just seems like. But you're usually used to like, oh, it's really cold tomorrow, but like you'll walk out tomorrow and it's like, yeah, it's fine. But it's like there's just everyday reminder when you walk outside, like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Well, and we also had a bunch of like snowstorms too, so there's just like this layer of compacted ice and snow on like the roads. The main roads are pretty good right now, but still all the side roads are just like, and it started to thaw up today, and now it's like creating its own potholes because like some of it's like melting, but the other parts are not. So it's just like this layer of concrete ice now has its own potholes.
So you have permafrost roads now.
Yeah.
It's ice road trucking everywhere you go.
Yeah, it was. The interstate's been fine, pretty much like by day 2, but the on ramps were terrible, and so you got people just driving up your ass, doing 60. And it's like, hey, we're about to hit this icy off ramp, motherfucker.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't even go to work Tuesday because we only got 9 inches, which is not like impassable here. But when it happens between midnight and when you're supposed to get up to work, like that's when the storm ends. It's like, wow, it's like one look outside. It's like, nope, I'm not doing this. Because by the time you shoveled your car, I mean, I had to get up at 2 a.m. and run the snowblower to get my car out, which everyone would have loved. And it's like, yeah, I'm just not going to work. And no, but neither did anyone else. So they might have to pay us for it. We'll see, though. They've always said that. Like, yeah, we had a lot of people missing that day because of the snow. We're probably going to get you paid. You don't have to use your time to cover it. And then they'll come back and be like, oh, yeah, you got to use time to cover it. So we'll see. I don't know what it takes for them to shut, because all the other plants, they sent them home, or they just said, don't come in. Not mine. No. I don't know what it takes. There like nuclear bombs going off in the distance. Like, maybe we're not going to have a productive day, but I don't care anymore. I'm just like, yeah. Whenever it's 150 degrees in the summer, I don't miss time for that. So when there's like something that physically impedes my path to work, yeah, I'm not coming in. I'm definitely not going to white knuckle it down the freeway with a bunch of morons who are going to try to drive like there's nothing wrong. So yeah, when we get 9 inches of snow in 5 hours, it's like, yeah, that's, and especially when it happens like overnight, it's like, yeah, I'm not coming to work.
Then Texas got all fucked because it's been freezing and snowstorms there for the past week.
Yeah. Was it cold like what you were getting?
Yeah, I was getting down there. I mean, it was like there's just a whole cold front down the center of America.
Okay.
And the only thing like that was still hot was like California and like the southern East Coast was like still warm, but everything else was cold.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't know how cold it was in Texas. I've heard these horror stories about people freezing to death in their beds and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. It was sub-zero there.
Oh, okay.
But also, I mean, but like, where we live, like they're prepared for those things. Like, you know, I mean, you hear stuff about like California where like people are like, oh, we just don't have air conditioning in our houses. I'm like, what? Isn't it hot there? But actually, like, no, because like the weather is so consistent in California that it's like, if you can live in your house on an everyday thing, it's like, yeah, you don't need air conditioning. Just open a window or whatever. Or in New York, you got the weird thing where it's like heating's free because they have that weird like central heating thing that goes through every building. And it gets to the point where it's like, oh, it's too hot in the wintertime. We're going to open our windows because we can't control the heat because it's controlled by the government or whatever.
It's like a lot of steam pipes, I think, running through the walls. And,
whenever you see like a giant exploding road in New York, it's not a terrace. It's usually one of those heating pipes exploding.
And those do not, because we have steam heat at work. They're slowly phasing it out because they can't maintain it anymore. It's too expensive. But yeah, there's no regulation on that heat. Just the colder it gets, there's a guy in a room that turns it up, and it's all based on PSI, not temperature. And like I've been in there before where it's like, why am I sweating? It's like if you threw, it's like -20 with the wind chill outside. It's like, oh, that's just the steam heat. The colder it gets, the hotter it goes. Like, oh, this is awful. It's very efficient, though, I guess.
But yeah, we're seeing like, Texas got really fucked up because they're not prepared for these things. And I was just kind of thinking, I was like, isn't Texas supposed to be like super important? Like in the whole, and like basically the whole state's got shut down by this. Like, and then I went to go get gas the other day, and every gas station only had 3 pumps open. It's like, oh, right.
What's going on? That's why it cost me. It was $270 here this week. It's like, oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, that was and then the politicians were like blaming stuff on solar panels and wind energy because none of them because they were like, oh, we'll save money if we don't weatherproof them.
Yeah.
And guess what? They froze.
Yeah, when they say that stuff like froze, I was like, what? They run those here all the time.
Yeah.
It's
the great example is like that's how the stations in Antarctica are powered is by wind turbines.
Yeah, I know they were in the cold. I mean, the way it got explained to me is when Texas decided to take most of their power grid off the national grid and just do this internal, unregulated Wild West type market.
Yeah,
they took a bunch of that feel-good money from the government. Because they see one form of energy they were just trying to build as many megawatts into that system as they could. So it's like, yeah, put up a bunch of wind farms. We don't care. They weren't doing it because they gave a shit about environment. They're just getting money from the government to do it. It's like, yeah, put a bunch of those up. And, oh, yeah, and we'll skimp on all the essential shit. And because I remember like in the summer, when last year the electricity was essentially free because they were making so much of it that they're just like, yeah, you can, like it was after 6 p.m., you can run the air conditioner at 30 degrees if you want to. It's not. We have more than enough base load to accommodate this, and then it's like, oh, that's weird. And then here's the other side of that right now: people getting $7,000 electrical bills and shit in there. It's like, oh yeah.
But this made me think of like, man, being a Texas politician must be the fucking easiest job in the world. Because all you do is you placate your constituency. You tell them they're strong Texans who are self-reliant and they don't need government. And your government, so then you don't do anything for like 10 years. And then a catastrophe happens and you just resign in disgrace and then use your back-end deals with all the business people you've made being a politician, and you just get a cushy consulting job for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's not a bad gig. Even if people die, you just kind of dance through the raindrops. Everything's fine here. Put on a big cowboy hat. And did you hear about the mayor of a town that had to resign?
Yeah.
Because he said people were, don't be pussies. The government's not supposed to provide you with electricity. And people are dying. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this guy. It's like he was trying to be a parent to his constituents. And it's like, this isn't your daughter asking for $600 for the 10th time in a month. These are the people who rely on you.
If you don't have water, well, be self-reliant and go get water. If I read that text and didn't have water, beating on his door with a shotgun, like, I'm here to be self-reliant and steal your fucking water.
Yeah, also, like, these people are all good at, like, prepping and being self-reliant. Why couldn't your state handle this? Why are they not prepared for cold?
Well, because that's only the crazies to do that.
Yeah, but isn't
No.
Texas all crazies?
Apparently not. I don't know. But yeah, that's
But I can understand because, like, we had the derecho last year, and that was fucked.
yeah.
That was worse than the flood. Like, because we had half the city under 15 feet of water, but guess what? Electricity worked, plumbing worked, water worked, cell phones worked.
Yeah.
The only thing is, like, traffic sucked because there's only one way across town, but things worked. And yeah, people lost their houses, and I think only like one person died just because of health issues.
Yeah.
But the derecho, just like, oh, this is what it's like when this is like a mini apocalypse. This is what happens when everything fails.
Yeah, that was. Did anyone die in that there?
I think so, but not as a result of, like, just wind, but it's like things of, like, like health issues and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Like, you can't get power, and, like, someone's respirator doesn't work anymore, stuff like that. But not as much as, like, the some of the stuff that's coming in from Texas was. But that's also also that happened to all of Texas, whereas, like, the derecho was just a very specific path of cities that Cedar Rapids just happened to be on. So I was like, that's why I had to drive to Iowa City, and it's like, oh, look, a town that works, because it didn't get hit by it.
Well, what's these glowing things? Lights. Yeah, I will say now, like, if it gets close to like 100 degrees, like actual temperature, like here, things stop.
Yeah.
They don't usually lose power here, but yeah, they'll just. I mean, they almost canceled work once because it's like these people are just going to pass out because we only have those. I mean, nothing like a big steel box with a lot of welding going on in it to be a great place to be in the summer, but yeah, they just have no way to move air effectively through those places. So when it gets really hot, where it's just hot air, that's one thing weird here.
Well, I hear that's one of the reasons that the power grid went down is that most people don't have natural gas heating in Texas because you really don't need heating too much. There's a lot of, like, the heating element is like it's electrically powered.
Yeah.
And so everybody turned on their heater at the same time, and apparently that caused blackouts.
Yeah, heating up a metal wire and blowing a fan on it uses a lot of amperage. For the amount of BTUs you get out of that versus your burning fuel that's insanely different. Russia's mostly heated that way because they sell all their natural gas for currency.
Yeah,
that's why they have so many giant nuclear power plants. That's the main reason. But, like, Russia needs electric heat. Like, we need a hole in our head, but it's like, yeah, that's because they can get currency for their natural gas.
But I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily buy that as the primary reason. I bet it was just, like, a lot of power lines and stuff that were not used to freezing cold and probably collapsed or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have the infrastructure for that, then yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and then they don't have. It's not like why would you have snowplows? It's
yeah. Yeah, do you sell snowblowers in Texas? I don't think you do. I mean, hell, from what happened here and the number of neighbors that came to my house, you wouldn't think anyone had them here. You got that big snowblower? Yeah, I do. I do. And it costs me a lot of money. But yeah, I'll come do that. Or my son will, actually. He'll come do that.
I have another drink to hawk that we aren't getting any money for, but I might as well talk about it.
Okay, I can't see it at all.
Can show up.
There it is. Zevia Organic Blackened Sweet Raspberry Tea.
So this is a company that makes the Zevia. I mean, Zevia. So they make the stevia flavored pop.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff you kind of have to get used to. I like it, but, like, it all tastes like generic versions of like
Yeah.
of things.
Something's off.
But I like their Mountain Dew one. I think that one's pretty good, and I pretty much I can drink them all. They're fine. But this one, this just tastes like fucking sweetened tea.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, so like the regular soda ZVs are about $1 a can, which is pretty expensive, but like whatever. It's supposedly better, because natural. This stuff is $2 a can, so it's
You're getting up into Starbucks prices
yeah.
there.
This is and then this is me buying a case. This is,
Drink it slow.
yeah,
Savor it.
but it's really good. But too bad it's too expensive.
Yeah. Oh well. Oh yeah, that's
But yeah, I did because like the Zevia has a specific like tang to its taste, a different kind of sweetness. So it was very surprising that like, oh, this just tastes like sweet tea. That's interesting.
I used to use that stuff on my coffee.
Yeah,
Because I didn't really, because the coffee flavor is so powerful. Flavor is so powerful that I didn't really. It's like, yeah, this tastes like coffee with some kind of weird sugar in it. But then, I forget why I quit. I probably just ran out of it and didn't buy anymore.
I mean they sell like just the raw stevia stuff. So I wonder if I can just take some black tea and just toss some of the stevia sugar in, and that'd be like way cheaper than.
Yes, definitely, you probably could. You just have to work on getting the balance right.
Yeah.
See if you can get it in a liquid form. I know if you get like liquefied sugar, it's like 10 times more powerful sweetness.
It's like what is that? It's like cold brew coffee. It's like they sell there's ones you can sell. It's like, yeah, you just drink this, and there's ones that's like, oh, you're supposed to cut this, and
Yeah.
people like almost have heart attacks because like, oh, I thought they could just drink it straight up. It's like, nope, that's not how it's meant to be work.
Yeah, I got some cold brew stuff I was playing with once, and I forget, I was drinking it at home. I made it myself, and I was like, I had the shakes. I was like, well, this isn't good. I didn't even think about it. Because I was actually working on something. I was like, why are my hands shaking? Am I developing a palsy or something? And I realized, oh, this is like just a blast of, just pure caffeine straight to your brain.
Yeah.
Because after about 15 minutes, the shaking went away. And I was like, oh, okay, that was.
Yeah, when I made cold brewed coffee before, I always like had a container and it filled up with ice, and that was basically like how I cut it, is just like mixing it with the ice. But yeah, it's like for some reason cold brew coffee brews way more concentrated than typical coffee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But also you're brewing it for like a day, so
yeah, it's like you're getting all the full effect. The other thing is Turkish coffee,
what's that?
where it's just the coffee is basically powder.
Huh.
Ground so much it's powder, and you drink it unadulterated straight, but you have like some kind of like your Turkish pastry or something very sweet, like a honey sweetened pastry you have with it, and that's like that stuff. You really got to be careful with that because that's just like raw atomized coffee. And there used to be a place around here that did it because you drink it like so hot, it's like, oh, this could burn you. Like there's two things, hot and something with honey on it. Otherwise, it'd be completely unpalatable. But you drink it out of those tiny cups, They used to play around with that stuff. They had different stores and restaurants here you could go try. Back when you could go into stores and restaurants, before we all just became vectors for pathogens. Sit around and do that. I've never gone to the places where you smoke hookah pipes and stuff. I was like, no, that's not my jam.
Oh.
You guys go ahead and do that.
I always hear like stories of people doing that. I'm like, where are these places? Like I just I don't go anywhere, so like I just never know. Like these places exist. That seems shady.
All around here they do. I mean, huge Middle Eastern population here too.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing with that is like, look, I quit smoking 6 years ago. I was like, I'm not going to start again. That sucked to quit. And I was like, yeah, well, try this hookah. It's like, no, that's just smoking, just a different version of smoking. That'll put me right back into that mindset again. So no thanks.
Also, like in the Marines, you'd always have like some new thing that like they're banning, and it's like, and it was like smoke and spice at hookah shops. Like that was like a drug that you can get popped for. Then that was new to the list or what, a banned list, and then it was just all these Marines like, oh fuck. I'm like, what? Like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm just used to Marines just getting drunk all the time. Like that's acceptable. It's like, why are you going out extracurricular hookah smoking? Like, everyone already has e-cigarettes anyways. Like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, I just can't get enough, man.
Yeah, it's like stories from the locker room before football games. Well, you know, because I knew, like, Grayson never did that, but I knew like the e-cigarettes were really bad with teenagers. Like, I'd heard stories, but I never realized how bad.
Yeah.
And these guys would get like these things where it looks like they're holding a brick with a nipple on it, and you press a button and it lights up and beeps, and yeah, they're just taking like just full straight huge blasts of nicotine right before, like they're filling the locker with vape fumes because they think it's funny, you know, before they go out and play football. And it's like the kids are probably taking almost lethal doses of nicotine. Just get all hyped up for the games. Like, I had no idea kids were doing that. He's like, oh yeah. When they outlawed that here, he was like, I knew that was coming. I said, I just didn't know. So I played around with that in its early days as an alternative to smoking. It's like, well, this is just putting something else weird into my body.
But yeah, so I've been playing a video game for the past couple of weeks.
Okay, which one?
I've been playing 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim.
Okay, is this some Japanese game?
Yes, it is.
That sounds like a Japanese game title.
Yeah, it's also, I don't know if it's like lost in translation or something, but like, so yes, there is 13 Sentinels, but technically there's more than 13 Sentinels. The Aegis Rim thing, I have no idea what the fuck it's referring to. There is a thing in the game that is called Project Aegis, but the Rim part just completely confuses me. No idea. Other than, I think, because it's giant robots and it's probably brings some correlation to Pacific Rim. That's the only thing I can think of where they just threw that in there because, like, oh, robots and Rim, the Americans will understand.
Yeah. There's a bunch of morons anyway.
But yeah, this is the Omni sci-fi story. Absolutely every sci-fi trope that exists is in the story. It's
throwing it all
great.
at the wall, huh?
So it starts out in 1985 Japan, and you have these school kids that control these giant robots called Sentinels, and they're fighting kaiju. So it's very Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Okay.
And then so you start doing that, and like, so this is mostly a visual novel game. And then there's like gameplay part that's more like it's like a turn-based strategy game, but it's very simple. The developer of this they're called Vanillaware, and they do a lot of like 2D video games with like they're very heavily into 2D art.
Okay.
So that's what they're known for. But it's a pretty small studio, so you know they can only do so much. So they're pretty limited what they can do. But like, you know, this is like a 30-hour game, so it's pretty. Has a pretty large scope to it. So you start out in 1985 Japan, and then you go to 1945 Japan.
Ooh, takes a dark turn.
And they're building a giant robot during World War II. And they're going to use it to fight the Americans.
Okay.
Then you jump to 2188. And you're just at a satellite, and you see and all the characters. You see, like, the one guy who you first see him in 2188. It's like, oh, okay. And then the next time you see him, he's in 1945, and he seems to have no recollection of the future whatsoever. He's just a guy from 1945 Japan.
Okay.
It's like, what the fuck's going on here? And then it's like you jump around from different characters, and you kind of like, it's like a 5 to 10 minute segment every once in a while, and you finish that up, and then like you can continue the story, and there's a percentage of like what the story's on. But yeah, you end up like, you'll pick up more characters. So eventually you only do like, the 13 Sentinels things. There's 13 different characters that you end up following through this game. And and like every character has their own story, and that's kind of like a sci-fi story unto itself. There's one girl who is like getting orders from a talking cat to shoot her fellow classmates with a gun.
Okay.
With nanomachines in it.
All right.
But you don't know. But then the cat refers to it as like, you need to eliminate the witches. Like that's how the cat refers to the people. And then she goes around shooting people with a gun. And at first you don't know if this is lethal or not, and then you find out it isn't. But yeah, she's going around shooting people because a cat told her to. You have one girl who's kind of like, she kind of has like an ET story. She finds this little robot that's kind of Wall-E-esque, and she thinks it's an alien, and then they travel back in time because they're looking for something. Oh man, I'm just all over the place. But yeah, the story goes, because yeah, there's it ends up being that the kaiju are not kaiju. They're a robot. They're terraforming robots that are invading different timelines. And so they start in like 2188 and they destroy the Earth, and they're working in 40-year increments. They're working through different time periods. And then eventually they get to 1945 and they destroy 1945, but 1985 is okay.
Okay.
So it's like, wait, how can the robots exist? How can the kaiju exist in 1945 but not exist in 1985? Like, what happens there? And it's kind of like Lost, where it's like, they'll just like they'll introduce a new twist, and there's always an explanation, but you're like, but wait, that doesn't really make any sense. But then they're just on to the next twist.
Multiverse. Next story.
Yeah, that is a thing.
Oh.
There is a multiverse at some point. And what else is there? There's androids. It's very it becomes Terminator at some point. And then and then it becomes the Matrix. And then it becomes it's just everything. But I bet if I give you two science fiction things, you can probably guess what's going on.
All right.
I will give you Seven Eves, and I will give you the Matrix.
Oh, computer simulation to re-inhabit the Earth's population.
Yep.
Something like that. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
So one of the big revelations is that there is no time travel.
Yeah, because it's all just playing out in a sim.
Yes, it's a simulation. But so at some point, they always talk about when they time travel, they talk about it as shifting. And so like, it's like, so is that different from time travel? And then you figure out it is. And there's like these specific zones that are separated by 40 years. And maybe I should get to the end first. So, like Seven Eves, something happens and the Earth is failing for some reason. And one of the characters, Professor Morimura, she is trying to create this Project Ark to basically try to get human life on another planet while Earth is failing. In order to finance that, she makes a deal with a gangster, and they have nanomachines, and then the nanomachines end up on the black market, and then somebody uses it to create a virus, and that nanomachine virus essentially wipes out all of humanity except for 15 people that are living in the space station.
Okay.
And so then they're working on this project, and then like other people are trying to figure out like maybe that's not the best way to spend our resources. So much like the most infuriating thing with 70s, it's like, look, there's only 15 humans left in the entire universe, and you're still gonna fight and kill each other for money and power. It's like, and then you live in a pandemic. It's like, oh yeah, of course they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Surprised 15 people are left.
And so I don't know, like at some point I think there's only like 6 people are killed in an explosion because there's only 15 people left in the universe, and one of them is an assassin who gets paid to kill the other one, and then like 6 people die because of course.
Yes, the rational assassin. Let's continue this mission.
And then one person, so Project Ark, like at some point gets sent out, and it's like von Neumann probes stuff, where it's like a self-replicating probe,
Yeah.
and then it goes out into the universe. And then they're supposed to, when it gets to its destination, it's supposed to, the robots that built the terraforming robots, they are real, but they just get used in the simulation as the kaiju. But so they do exist, 2 terraformed planets. But it's supposed to get the planet ready. But then they also have this thing that gets the people ready, and that's the simulation that they live in. And so, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, here's a fun thing. So when they get in their robots, they like swipe a part of their body, and then like this, and there's like it's like kind of like a graphic, a hologram graphic appears that just says start, and then they get transported to their sentinel, to their robot, and then they're like in the middle of the robot in a capsule, and for some reason when they're in the robot they're naked.
Okay.
So why that's important is because they're not actually in the robot, they're in their growth pod, but they only know it as like the cockpit to the robot that they're fighting with.
Oh, okay. This is one of those revealed truth stories that goes on, and like the further you go, the further you go.
Yeah. But like the fun things, like it's just like that's weird. Why is that? Why is that? So I mean, it ends up being an explanation as to like why they're naked in the robot is because, well, it's like the Matrix. They're in like their growth pod thing or whatever. And so, but everything that happens in real time inside the simulation. So like they're all like 16 years old inside the simulation. It's kind of like, played as a high school drama, and then like kaiju attack and whatever. And so why they have these different sectors from different time periods is they're trying to find the best way to like essentially restart humanity, because like if they start in 2188, they already know that didn't work out. So they have these kids in different decades and try to see which is the best one to like raise a new population. But also what ends up doing is that they're recreating Japan from all these different decades. So they're giving these newly grown human beings like a culture, an identity, and a past all at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So they're not just like, oh, the machine didn't just create a human. It's like, go live. Like they actually have like a history and a past that they, like, to their perception they live, and it does happen in real time. And the real dilemma that what happens is like one of the last 15 people, she puts something in this simulation code that'll make it fuck up, because she has some unrequited love, and she decides like all of humanity should die because of it.
That's a normal, yeah.
And the guy who wrote the code to the simulation, he used some bit of a video game to like manage like to do some like large scale management for like the terraforming robots. And so that gets like inserted into the video game. That's why the kaiju start attacking Earth. It's because of that bit of the game code that's in there.
Oh, okay.
And so and because the nano machines basically make everything real, so everything that happens to them in the simulation is really happening to them in the pod. So everything they feel is real. The nano machines make it real. So if they die in the simulation, then they die in real life, and the nano machines just recycle the body, and they start this. And they talk about loops. So like so if they don't defeat the kaiju, basically the simulation kills the people, and they just start over again.
Yeah. So they're living like the hosts in Westworld.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So like this time, like they start transferring between timelines. There's people because they were able to save themselves. Like their bodies were destroyed, but they were able to back up their minds in part of the programming, and so they are able to insert themselves back into the next loop. So then they end up being older versions of themselves. And so while there's a bunch of characters in there, they're like it's always like it's kind of like recycled versions and older versions of all the same 15 characters. Which with that you'd hope that would simplify it, but it actually becomes really confusing because just because I don't know how like Japanese refer to each other. There's like, a lot of people refer to people by their last name. Some people refer to themselves by their first name. Some people get that senpai thing added. Some people get the chan or the kun thing added. And then also people have nicknames. Also people have alternate identities. But luckily there's a list you can go to. There's like a whole list. It's like all the main points and stuff. So if you're like, who the fuck is that? You can go look it up. So that's pretty easy. But the big reveal is, so they sent these probes out, and we're left to assume that this is the first time they've broke out of this simulation. I mean, it could have happened on other planets, but like from this perspective of these people, this is the first time they've successfully overcome the sabotage of the program. And so they get out of they get out of the pods, and they're meant to go on and spread life to this new planet that's been made ahead of time for them. And it's revealed that all of humanity's been dead for 10 million years.
Okay.
This planet they're at is 1,200 light years away from Earth. And as far as we know, this is the first time like human life has been brought back to existence in 10 million years. So.
Yeah, so they're doing everything. You're right. They're throwing the Fermi paradox in there. Just for shits and giggles. Huh.
But it's a pretty interesting game, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I already explained everything to you, but it's on PlayStation, so you're never going to play it. Also, it's like 30 hours, so you're never going to play it. But I thought,
that's true.
But look up stuff about it. It's pretty neat.
It's good to hear about. I watched some stuff on YouTube about it. It's just interesting to see what they come up with. But yeah, like you said, they're throwing everything at the wall. That's definitely long walk sci-fi. There's so many things I'm forgetting right now. But there's interestingly, there's one weird relationship where, it's one like they're all 16 years old, but one lady, her like she has the DNA of her mom, but in this like looper instance, they grew up as like childhood friends. So it's just kind of weird. Like, the ultimate truth is that like, she was her mom in 2188, which was 10 million years ago. Zion has been destroyed hundreds of times. Oh, here we go.
But yeah, it gets weird because there's a lot of stuff with androids and stuff, and like you're trying to like, it's like, well, why does that matter if this is all simulation? But then like, the stuff they do in this simulation becomes practical application once you're out of the simulation. So if you can make androids in the simulation, technically you can make androids outside the simulation.
Yeah.
And like where that comes kind of useful is like, so they have like, so their lives are simulated, and they're the only people that like actually exist. But you have all these AIs that like fill out the city and everything, and like they're their friends, they're their parents, all that. I mean, like to them, that's their actual parents. Although weirdly, you never actually meet anybody's parents in this game. They, like I said, the game, the company's pretty small, so they're very limited. And also, there's a funny thing. There's a lot of thing with food in the game, and there's a food called yakisoba pan.
Yeah.
And I read a thing with the creator, and he thought, oh man, I should have chosen like some like super rich food, so that people would keep sending me that. But like, the reason they chose yakisoba pan is because the way their animation like pipeline works, it's easier just to give characters things that they can hold in one hand to eat than to do something else. And like, what yakisoba pan is basically, there's yakisoba noodles, which are basically fried noodles with sauce in them, and then what you do with it is you just throw all that in a sweet hot dog bun, and then that's yakisoba pan.
Just carbo loading in Japan.
Yeah. And there's like the one guy who like from his perspective was transported from 1945 to 1985. He was like starving to death, and then like not to death, but he was like he hadn't eaten for like 3 days, and the one of the characters gives him yakisoba pan, and like he calls her his yakisoba pan angel. So. But yeah, they all get together and they get in their sentinels and they fight the kaiju, because if they win the game, then they basically can escape the sabotage of the simulation. And so like all the stuff where it's like it doesn't necessarily like make sense. Like it's like you can explain away. I mean, it's like just because it's a simulation doesn't mean that the things they were doing were like pointless. Like you go back to it, it's like I guess it serves a purpose.
Well, yeah, it's like we learned in like Alistair Reynolds' book, like Absolution Gap, when they find the old American colony on the faraway planet where they just sent von Neumann machines that just created human wombs and made humans, and they all went crazy and killed each other because they were raised by machines. They were all sociopaths. And they brought the one guy back because he was dead, but they, the medical technology in those books, it was like all nano, and it's like if they just find a hair follicle, they can reanimate people. And yeah, they brought that guy back, and it turns out, oh yeah, he's a cold-blooded killer because he didn't have parents. He was just created and educated by machines and turned loose. And it's like, oh, that's why he's crazy. So when the one guy shot him out of an airlock or whatever, it's like, yeah, we won't bring him back.
But the thing where the android stuff comes in, why it's important, is that at some point they figure out, they think they can take the AI constructs that are individuals unto themselves in the simulation. They can bring them out of the simulation into human bodies.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's weird. Like they go back. They have like a 5-year reunion where they go back into the simulation, but like they aren't rendered as being older, which just comes off as weird. It's like, oh yeah, they're saving money. Like just keep the same character models.
Yeah.
But then there's like a character that they meet, and they're like hugging and crying because they haven't seen her for 5 years. But like to her, like they just went to school yesterday. Like this is just another day. But it's like, wait, did the simulation stop when they left? Like this seems weird. Like so, but that didn't really make sense. But then there was a fun moment where this one guy is like, the guy who's like he's like a thug and has a pompadour, and he like sees like the old, like the other gang he used to fight with, and he's like, oh man, I haven't seen you forever. And it's like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. It's like, yeah man, give it your best shot. And he starts crying. He's like so happy to see this guy he used to fight in his previous life. Yeah. And like I just feel sorry for him. He's like, did you eat something bad?
Yeah, I'll have to watch some stuff on YouTube about that. It sounds like they've made some deep sci-fi.
Yep.
All right, so we read a book this week.
Yep.
We read Matt Taibbi's Hate Inc. Why today's media makes us despise one another. Which was it's kind of like everything I ever thought, all just in one book.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing here that like, oh, I learned a lot. It's just like, oh no, all the suspicions I had were just articulated succinctly by one guy.
Well, I think the other thing like I didn't know, and I still haven't like looked it up, that was really interesting, was there's the story that like there's like the investigative story they did about like Chiquita Bananas like hiring like mercenaries to like basically like be thugs to farmers so they can get cheaper prices for bananas or something like that. And then like they ran the story, the news, like the whatever organization they're working for got sued and they lost the case, and that was basically the end of investigative journalism. I'm not sure when that happened, but like that was like, oh, I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, it happened in like the 2000s, I think.
Okay.
And a lot of it, like, I mean, the thing it explains is it does explain very clearly, like how the economic principles of how the news works now, and how it's like, oh, it's a lot easier to get people angry than it is to like do deep research and supply them with information, which we all kind of knew.
Yeah. Well, also like I like the thing that brought it into full view is the way he referred to the news as like a news product. It's like, oh, this isn't news. This is a product that contains news.
Yeah. This is like a stew, like a pot pie of entertaining news clips interspersed with commercials to buy, I don't know, medicine or whatever. Yeah, it's.
That was also the interesting thing where they're talking about like how news used to be financed, where it's like, with the internet now, but it's like, newspapers sold ads, but they also had like, help wanted, like all the what do you call that? Classifieds.
Yeah.
And like that was like $1 billion industry across, all these newspapers. And then basically like that all evaporated in like 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, the news has faced there's a lot of tough things that have happened with technology and with what people are willing to do and pay for. And also, but the consolidation of media has been really, it's been really bad. That's touched on here.
And social news media has not picked up anything, has not helped whatsoever.
Yeah, they're terrible in the quality control part. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, like when I was reading this book, I was thinking about some of the stuff he's talking about, and I don't know if he uses this term, but I've heard it used before. Is it like the moral panics?
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, we had the panics where people were putting razor blades in your Halloween candy. Then we had the satanic panic where devil worshippers were in every town, sacrificing children on altars or doing some kind of weird stuff. And it's like those were big waves when I was in the 80s, and now it's like we have a moral panic every 3 days about a whole variety. And it doesn't matter if it's right or left. It's just like there's cults of pedophiles out there. It's QAnon, or it's like everyone's a racist and they're all acting towards racist principles. Like it doesn't matter which side it's on. It's like we're constantly being inundated with this. And what this book describes is like, this is why you're being inundated with this, because they want you looking. They want you pissed off. They want you to pick a team and go to their news source. And
all this stuff is inconsequential to the system itself. Like this won't hurt the system. It's distracting from itself.
Yeah.
In that respect.
Yeah. I mean, it won't hurt until like people storm the Capitol because they think they're going to find the secret election fraud or.
Well, yeah, that was like this. It's just talking about like, oh, Trump does numbers, so we're just going to cover Trump, and it's like, oh, we're just going to hand him the election, huh?
Yeah, and you got to remember, and Matt Taibbi's been kind of like softball accused of being some kind of agent provocateur for the Russians, because he was one of the early guys that said, oh, this Russia stuff with Trump is all bullshit. By the way, none of this is fucking provable. And, and he was one of the early guys.
It's like, Russians were doing things because that's what they do.
Yeah.
But it's not like at the behest of Trump.
Yeah.
Even though he literally said, when people asked him about the Russians hacking things, he's like, yeah, they should do that. Even though he says stuff like that, that's not him. Like, oh yeah, we paid people in Russia to hack the election. That's just him being stupid.
Yeah. It was one of I think it was I think he broke this down, like what they actually impeached Trump for was trying to do, because a lot of people will tell you, oh, they impeached Trump because he did stuff with Vladimir Putin. It's like, no, he got on the phone with the prime minister or the premier or whatever the Ukraine has for a leader.
Yeah.
Said, hey, we won't give you the Dragon anti-tank unless you give me information on Joe Biden's son. Like, he just came out and said it like that. That's what he got impeached for. Now, if you think that has something to, you're essentially giving some of our most powerful man-portable anti-tank weapons to Ukraine to fight a proxy war against Russia and Vladimir Putin. If you think this guy is an agent of Russia doing this, and this is why he got impeached, you're really not paying attention to the news. And yeah, he's made a lot of points like that. It was because of him that I was not all just on board with that. I was like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm hearing different things here.
Yeah.
I'm hearing this guy and a few people that I listen to like him saying one thing, and then the New York Times and CNN is practically saying like, well, he's got a Russian flag in his office. You know, yeah, I mean, it's like somewhere in the middle lies the truth, but it doesn't look like the truth was in the middle at all. It looks like it was way somewhere else. But yeah.
But I mean, it's like if you think like if in another country they had some investigation about their politician, it's like, we think America meddled in our election. It's like, well, yeah, of course they did, but America's not going to pay for that. You are. If there's an election, we're there. That's not American. We're there to alter it to our result if we can. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like this type of stuff goes on all the time. It's not some unique American phenomenon, or the Russians tricked us into electing Donald Trump. It's like, no, people went out and voted for Donald Trump because they thought that was their candidate for whatever their reasons are. But to say this is all some nefarious plot of, you know, like I said, a country with an economy the size of Spain trying to overthrow us, just a rotten holdover from a rotten part of the world, a country that was only powerful because we didn't know what they'd bumble into with nuclear weapons. And
well, also like he gives like the details of like the amount of like propaganda they were able to put out over like a 4-year period, which is like, yeah, it's amazing, but like you'd have to be stupid to actually listen to it. And like, yeah, and there were those stupid people, and they were like retweeting it and all that stuff, but like, but that wasn't the reason he got elected, and that didn't.
No,
like, it didn't hand over the votes that he needed to win. Like he would have probably got those regardless of the propaganda or not. So,
but I just think it's funny that the author of this book, who is ostensibly to the left of everything, you know, he is that kind of guy, but is now some kind of limb of the Russians. And weirdly enough, like he was in Russia for a while. I think he actually speaks Russian, like because something in his family, like he worked over there. But he's not some tool of. But it's interesting that a guy who, like, politically is probably very much more in line with a lot of the people that write this news like this way is now some cast out, guy, because they loved him when he was writing all about the economic collapse. It's like, yeah, this is our guy. He's doing groundbreaking stuff. Oh, he says he must be pro-Trump because he doesn't agree with, the Russiagate shit. He's like, no, he's anti. Want Trump, but
well, even though like this book says like the both sides is just a false dichotomy, but he certainly is more critical of like the right wing of this stuff. Because it's like, oh, they're doing it intentionally. Like the left wings, like they're doing it intentionally, but they know better. Whereas like the right wing ones, like they don't know any better.
Yeah, the right wing stuff's scary because you're not going to get a bunch of. I'm trying to think of what left wing. I mean, you wouldn't see any of the left wing people doing anything that happened recently around this election, but you can get a bunch of right wingers together and do that. Like when they're talking about cutting like food programs for poor kids in inner cities, like a bunch of people don't show up at the state capitals with assault rifles to protest that, which they should. When they start talking about healthcare, it's like, yeah, I think the guy should show up with assault rifles for that too and demand it. instead of like, UFOs and, whatever the hell else they're worried about, devil cults. But yeah.
And then probably the only thing I could really speak to it, like, so he has like a whole chapter where he compares the Trump presidency to WWE.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Which I only have like some things to detail on it. He mostly has it right, but like he describes like the whole Trump Hillary thing as a babyface heel dynamic.
Yeah.
But like so like yeah, the whole idea of a babyface heel dynamic is like the heel cheats to win. The heel like makes fun of the babyface, and the heel beats the shit out of the babyface till eventually the babyface overcomes all odds and makes a heroic recovery to win the match. And that just never happened.
Well, but see, that's how Trump played both sides of it, though.
Yeah. Well, I
'Cause
mean,
he was the underdog. I'm for you, the little guy, and he was also the hey, let's kill people on Twitter guy.
well, I think the thing because he probably didn't know he spoke in the book like there's somebody he has friends that were explaining this wrestling terminology to him and he picked up on it. But like I think like the more like kind of inside thing to think about it's like with WWE, their audience is very cynical towards the product right now. And so when they do a babyface heel dynamic thing, the audience thinks it's bullshit. So instead of cheering for the babyface and booing the heel, they do the opposite because they're cynical towards the product.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Which is what happened here. It's like you have people like, why are you for Trump? It's like, because fuck all this.
Yeah. Do you believe in Trump? No. But if we put somebody so cynical and so obviously bad at the top of the system, maybe it will, change it.
Yeah,
or
it'll change it, or
it's
it'll be
just, I don't-
entertaining.
Yeah, I'll be amused on a daily basis. But yeah. So yeah, I didn't find myself like reading this book and like really disagreeing with a lot of things.
No, yeah, it's kind of a lot of things I thought were necessarily obvious. He makes a lot of comparisons that he's poorly mimicking Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent.
Yeah.
Which I pretty much forgot everything about that. I read that a long time ago. But
Yeah, I've read it a few times.
I mean, you read Chomsky's stuff, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Why does nobody grab onto this? It's like, well, because it only goes so far.
Yeah.
So like people are like, why are you trying to get me to change my entire lifestyle based on this true information? It's like, okay, whatever.
This is upsetting to me.
We should do something about it. How about no?
You first. Show me the way. Such a cynical people. Yeah, that's. I like how he breaks down though, because a lot of people like the internet does amplify this, but it's all still the same games, just at a faster pace.
Yeah.
With the internet, it's like there's nothing new here. It's just the same stuff going on, but there's just a lot more of it, and people are just overwhelmed. They just, they can't. I can't keep up with it.
I mean, it's like I'm very selective with my news now. So like, even though a lot of this book is about like this is how you should healthily absorb your news, and like he's just talking about like everyone on their phone all the time and stuff like that, and getting news and scared all the time. Is like I've been not necessarily ignoring the news, but I've been very selective in my news, and not just like I just read what I want to hear. Like not that. It's just like I guess it's like also like probably when Obama got elected. Like I gave up on all like the Daily Show and Bill Maher, like all that stuff, because that stuff seemed important at the time because like Bush was so terrible, and it seemed important. Like okay, yeah, this is the fight back or whatever, but like yeah, this stuff is funny, but I can't take this idea to like my political opposite and like be like, hey, like, doesn't this change your mind? It's like, you're just ridiculing me. You're not changing my mind.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I just kind of got rid of all that stuff because it's not important. It's fun and engaging, but it's not important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just candy. It's all it is, and it can be fun. I mean, I guess if you're in a dark place, well, the nice thing about like Jon Stewart, they had some brilliant writing there.
Yeah.
So it was always
Oh
fun
yeah,
to
there's
watch.
definitely obvious talent, but
But some of that stuff it gets to be like, are we ever gonna slay the dragon? Are we ever gonna just come home? Is the war ever gonna stop? You know, and after a while, you just get to it's just like. What did because they used a term in this book, it was called rooting for the laundry, which is where you always pull for the home team no matter what, just because you wear their jersey,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter what they do and how fucking stupid and inconsequential it is, and just what a dramatic gesture that means nothing. It's just you might as well fart really loud into the microphone as whatever you're saying because it equals the same result. You might be more entertained with like a politician just loudly flatulating into a microphone, but yeah, that's why I'm burnt out on. I mean, I don't see solutions in the system we have. I mean, I know there's directions I don't want it to go, but there's also like, you know, it's like I look at the other side. It's like, what's your plan? Oh, okay, yeah, that's not gonna work either. Thanks. That's not viable. So, but that's why I like this guy because. You know, it does poke at both sides. I mean, because the right wing stuff's obvious.
Yeah.
Like to pick apart a Sean Hannity show, even with the basic knowledge I have, it's not going to tax my abilities too much. Now, am I going to be able to drill down on some NPR segment and prove that they're propagandists? That will be a little more difficult. And they might actually be telling the truth because typically they do. But yeah, anything that's not like just an advertisement for something is I don't watch and read a lot of that stuff, but there are a lot of things I do watch and read. It's just sometimes I get interested in a story. It's like I should talk about it on the show, and then I'm going to go to my sources and I'm going to find out, oh, I don't have the kind of education or data mining ability or ability to take all these facts and put it together in an entertaining format. So I'm just not going to talk about this issue. I'm just not. I'm qualified. I am not qualified for one. And even if I could listen to qualified people, I'm not good enough to put the data together. And we're not going to have a 30-minute conversation about it because that would just bore the shit out of half the people. And the other half would tell me I'm getting everything wrong. So it's like, oh, okay. I'm just going to fart into the microphone now.
Well, it's like sometimes you got to go to other countries to get news from your country because it's not filtered. It's like, I better go to BBC News to figure out what's actually going on here.
What's going on here? Oh, this sounds like the Jingo filter. America, fuck yeah. Coming again. Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm not listening. I'm not watching that. Or I'm not watching where it's like troops are deploying somewhere and they're playing like Nazi march music in the background. Okay, which is it? The truth has to lie somewhere in this, but yeah.
But,
so this,
and he does an interesting takedown of Rachel Maddow.
yes,
where he's just like, oh yeah, like she like went all in on the Russian conspiracy stuff and kind of ended up eating it there. But also like he has this whole chapter about like condemning her, but he's like he knows she's talented and can do better. Where like he has none of those expectations for like any of the Fox News people. It's like, oh
well, yeah. Well, because on the cover of the book, which was controversial to a lot of people, you have Rachel Maddow, who is a Rhodes Scholar. And then on the other side, you have Sean Hannity, who graduated school. Me and Sean Hannity are equally as qualified to be broadcasters on any subject because we both graduated high school. I don't look as good as Sean Hannity, but and I can't do impromptu rage over things. I guess I could work on it, but yeah. So that's kind of the weird dichotomy there. I was interested in the Rachel Maddow because when all this was going on, like she's someone I like, and I know she's smart, and I like some of the segments she puts together. I don't agree with all her conclusions.
Yeah, that's always the thing I have with their stuff because I end up like passing through and then like it's on the TV and it's like this is well done, this is well researched and presented very well, but then when you get to the end where they draw their conclusions, and it's like Webster's dictionary just defines collusion as, and then like they reach this magical like this, now they're guilty. It's like, oh, this is all bullshit now.
We thesaurus them into prison. Yeah, I was very curious when all this was going on, knowing how I felt about it and knowing how she felt about it. It was like when it finally came out in the Mueller report, when there was, they just like breathlessly anticipating, here it comes, and dun 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 dun. It's kind of like the Price is Right thing where you don't guess the price right, and it's like, oh, her career is done. She's fucked. She was so in on that. There's no backing out of that. This is what it became. Just like, I like the comparison he made to the WMD in Iraq. It's like, how long can you scream the lie and it doesn't happen, and nobody goes to jail, nobody loses their job. Still looking for him to this day, I guess. I don't know. We never found him. So that's why I was keenly interested in that part of the book, because I had some feelings about this. And I was always like, well, what happened to her? What does he research and found out? It's like, oh, but basically what I thought is nothing. We just go on. It's the quest never ends. We never make it to Mount Doom. We never throw the ring in. It's the never ending story.
Yeah, she put it all in black, but not all of it. Like, it's like the house gave her some a credit line, so she's still going. So it hasn't ruined her career or anything.
Yeah. Which is scary when you think about it, because this isn't like, oh, we're in the midst of reporting and we were doing some investigative stuff and maybe we got a few facts wrong. No, the whole thing, the baby and the bathwater, just exploded out a window. We're still going to make $20 million a year, and it makes me wonder, like, well, what can I believe that's, it's not that I'm not going to have time to go do all the footnote research myself on. Like, do I have to research everything like that?
And
if I do, that's a lot of homework.
And she's probably still going to be around for a long time. Because I doubt and I don't know, but I doubt she's going to be sexually harassing people at the workplace.
Probably not. I would say no. I think she's happily in a relationship with somebody. That doesn't preclude.
No.
That's just me naively thinking, well, once you're married, you're hands. Boy, I'm full of shit there. I mean, from my experience, yes, but for other people, no. That's still.
Well, that's how naive you are. You couldn't even conceive of it, but of course it happens. But you're not in a position of power where people are willing to do anything to get ahead. So.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not tooting my own horn there. Men are only as faithful as their opportunities. So it's like there's no forklift groupies. But yeah, that's.
But I mean, I usually Matt Taibbi stuff is like kind of insightful and funny. This is more, I'm not sure insightful, but it's organized well. It's somewhat funny. He's trying to be more serious this time around, to be taken seriously.
Yeah,
but he still has some good one-liners here and there.
Yeah, well, it's not a subject like when he was doing the financial stuff. It's like, oh, this is something I'm completely unfamiliar with. I'm listening to this for information. This is more like, oh, this just reaffirms everything I kind of knew was going on, but now I have like names and dates and facts and figures that, like, oh, it's just as depressing as I thought, maybe even more so.
I'm thinking like the last one I read of his was Insane Clown President, which is just is so, it's depressing and very, very funny all at the same time. It's just a group of people going against their own interests in a very excited fashion.
Yeah, I mean, going hard too, not just like, oh, I'm casually indifferent to some of these social policies. No, it's like, I don't care if I don't get my insulin. It's like, wow, all right. Yeah, that was a good. Yeah, that was more, I guess, entertaining, sad. Whereas this is just kind of like,
Well, with this, there's no way, there's no path towards
fixing
this. It's just like, this is how it is now.
Yeah, there's no amount of homework you can do to lower your heart rate.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could there'd have to be just some philanthropic billionaire that's like, let's create a new news network that's very boring and just delivers the news.
Isn't
And
that
the-
Al Jazeera? No, or RT,
What's RT?
the Russia Today.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Essentially, yeah, it's a propaganda arm of the Russian government, but a lot of like failed American anchors. A lot of people that used to be on MSNBC are on RT, and then they'll go and scream on every podcast, scream from the mountaintops. They don't tell me what to say and not say, and it's like I don't believe you.
There was one of the giant bomb guys. He was recently interviewed by a German, their German BBC essentially,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all in English. And he
Yeah.
said they were wildly professional.
They were very Teutonic in how they ran. their
we're just talking about stupid video games. They're very they didn't have any idea. They know it's a news story. They need to cover it, and they legitimately have questions for me because I know way more than them about this subject. And they're just wildly professional and considerate. It's like, that was wild, and it's all in English.
Yeah. Well, it's like all the shows like Iceland. I've heard that everything's in English. Like they'll ask comedians or whatever from America, "Hey, you want to do a Iceland talk show?" It's like, I don't speak that language at all. Oh no, we just do it all in English. You just have to introduce it in Icelandic. Because the one guy said that everyone was really nice, and he went to introduce the show, and it sounded like he was doing some satanic chant when he was speaking Icelandic, and he's like, "Well, welcome to the studio," and he's like, "What did you just do? Is that a language? Holy shit!"
Did you just cast a spell?
Yeah. Are you a wizard? Oh. Yeah, the news is pretty bland in other countries. I mean, the BBC can be, they have a part of the news that's like, we're going to have like a round table argument, but it clearly says like opinion in all four corners of the TV. It's not, so what we do here that's weird, and they even talked about it in this book a little bit too, is like, you don't know where the news reporting ends and the opinion begins.
Yeah.
And like he said, even like the New York Times is doing that. It's like that used to be like the paper in America.
Yeah, there used to be you had 400 versions of CNN, and the one
Yeah.
I'd watch at some point was just headline news, because it was just literally them leading headlines. There was no opinion or interviews. It was just and then they reach a point and they just repeat the same thing over again. And if there's something new, that'd be inserted in, that's what CNN used to be. That's what news used to be.
Yeah. And the History Channel used to only show World War II documentaries.
And now it's Pawn Stars 5.
Pawn Stars, the next generation.
Pawn Stars, the search for more money.
Never-ending search for capital.
Wasn't that the thing in Spaceballs that was supposed to be he's selling the merchandise, and for Spaceballs 2, the search for more money.
Yep.
Which I guess one of the reasons that they're allowed to make Spaceballs, well, it's parody, so they would have been allowed anyways, but he got some stuff from Lucas because he agreed to never sell any toys based on Spaceballs.
Oh, okay. Who, Mel Brooks?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, see, those were great comedies. Don't make anything like that anymore.
No.
It's all got to be
Well,
poignant.
they used to make stuff like that. It was just terrible cash-in stuff where it's like epic movie or superhero movie, and those are all terrible.
Yeah, no, those aren't any good. I mean, like Airplane and movies like
Naked
that.
Gun.
Yeah, those are great. Because they are just ridiculous. I mean, you just know, like with Airplane, it was like that is so much compressed gags just running.
Yeah, I like that. You can watch Airplane with the kind of detail analysis you could like watching The Godfather, where it's just like, oh, you can find something new every time you watch it.
Yeah, all the background shit and the names of stuff. It's like watching a Stanley Kubrick movie, but denser.
Except you don't have to like discover existential crisis in the background. It's just like, hey, there's a new gag I never saw before. So it's a lot more enjoyable that way.
Yeah, which is what the mind is drawn to. Also,
Where like all those new ones, they had nowhere near the depth of that. It was just pretty. Here's the joke, and they scream it at you. Like, isn't that funny? It's like, no.
why are you screaming at me with a megaphone? Yeah, they never got that formula right again. Who knows? Maybe we'll do comedy again in this country.
Well, I mean, like, they kind of like, with the Waynes and like when they made Scary Movie, like they got that one really right, and then Scary Movie 2 went off the rails, and then they got one of the Zuckers to do 3 and 4, which were okay.
Yeah,
I thought they were better than 2. 2 was just a disaster. And then like the Waynes like did like the haunted house movies, which I haven't seen those, but I doubt they. Oh, maybe I should watch it. Maybe it's just as good as Scary Movie. I don't know.
Well, speaking of Scary Movie, we watched a movie this week.
Well, technically, I watched a different version of the same movie.
Yeah, I watched whatever was on the.
You watched the theatrical cut, and I watched the ultimate cut.
Let's see that. Special. Oh, okay. So how long was that? Like 5.5 hours?
This is 3 hours and 27 minutes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about like a half hour more. What's interesting is that, so this is like a lot of like director's cut stuff. It's just, they'll have extended scenes or they'll throw deleted scenes back in. But this is like a recut of the movie. So the stuff is in different places. There's now an intermission, so it's kind of like Ben-Hur. Yeah.
Okay.
There's stuff that's in the theatrical cut that he cut out of this version. It's like, well, if I'm going to get more this way, then I can get rid of that. Which is interesting. So this gets so I just watched it with the Oliver Stone commentary. So I can't really comment on like performances by the actors and stuff. So I have more like the background stuff and then sort of the visual stuff. So like I and I didn't compare the versions, but like I remember watching this when it first came out on DVD, and I only watched it once, so I was like, well, I guess I don't need to see this ever again. And I remember this a lot better than I did the first time, but that could be the cut of the movie or just listening to Oliver Stone. I'm not sure, but it seemed way better than I remember it this time through.
Oh, okay.
But like it's bookended by Anthony Hopkins as Ptolemy. I think that's how you say his name. Starts with a P and a T and Ptolemy.
The historian.
And then it starts with the battle with in Macedonia with the Grecians. Is that it?
The Persians?
Persians. Wait, no, they are. Wait, no, they are Persians, right? Or wait, no, what's Alexander?
They're they're basically Greeks, but he's a Macedonian.
Okay.
One of the city states. Yeah.
Starts with that, and then also like they he like compartmentalized Angelina Jolie stuff. So there's like kind of a part in the first half where it's like all in one block, and then there's a part in the second half where it's all in one block. Which I remember that being kind of infuriating in the original cut, where she just keeps popping up now and again, and it's like, yeah, we get it. He has mother issues.
Yeah.
So I think it's better this time around, but I'm not sure.
Snake Lady's back, but it's not Medusa.
And then the other thing that got added back in, there's it's like Bessa or something like that, or Busa. It's a eunuch that he has a relationship with when they.
Oh, his body man or whatever.
Yeah. Well, no, not the Jared Leto guy. This is like a different guy.
No, yeah, he's like a servant of some kind.
Yeah. A sexual servant.
Yeah.
They picked him up the harem. But anyways, like that guy is like featured way more in this cut, which pissed off a lot of people who were like, "No, why'd you have to do more gay stuff?" Which that's always the weird thing with there's always like these Christian historians where they're obviously Christian first and historian and irresponsible historian second.
Yeah.
And they always like to make some point that like Rome fell because they had too many gay people leading. And then it's like, well, what about Alexander the Great? It's like, and then they pull the emergency letter and it's like, he was bisexual.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard those arguments before, and
I mean,
really,
I don't think it makes his character more interesting, but I don't think it necessarily matters. But like, yeah, it matters to those people, like where it's like, this cool guy who conquered the world can't be gay.
well, essentially, what you got to remember about that, what I learned in studying history, is when you're talking pre-Christian civilizations, there was no hang-ups about any kind of sex.
Yeah.
Sex with animals, sex with children, sex with men. It was all, there was no like rules. It was like, well, I'm going to live to be 23, so I got to get all my fuck in a pretty narrow frame of time. So that's like, there was no stigma to Alexander the Great doing that, except his one wife didn't like it. But it was like,
yeah, one of his couple wives.
who was that? The actress. Couldn't believe who it was. It was
Rosario Dawson.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's Rosario Dawson. Holy shit. I didn't recognize. Well, this is the first time I've seen this movie in a long time.
Oh, have you seen it? I thought you didn't see it. I thought that you'd never seen it.
Or no, maybe, no, I haven't seen this one. Or what was the other bomb that came out this year that was in the same vein? Troy?
Yeah.
I haven't seen either one of those. But until I watched this today. So, yeah, this is the one I hadn't watched of Oliver Stone's because I heard it was boring. And my reports were accurate.
Well, I think some of it's like unfairly, like it seemed like a lot of the critique of this movie was like, seemed to be about like the hubris of like all these narcissists coming together to make this giant movie and failing. Like that was kind of like the critique around this movie. Which I think when you get away from that, or at least the cut I watched, it's like this is fine. But like I said, I can't really.
That was not why I didn't like the movie, but yeah, okay. I didn't.
I thought like all the battle stuff was cool. Like some of the, like I said, I can't really comment on the performances. I remember the performances kind of being laughable, like a bit. Like I didn't think like it's like what's his name, Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell, like yeah, sometimes he works, sometimes he doesn't. But there's also the movie that's like proved that like he can't be a leading man in a movie that costs more than $100 million.
Right.
Actually, I don't know how much this movie cost. It was
$126 million.
Because Oliver Stone reports this as being an independently made movie that was just on the back end supported by Warner Brothers. So,
okay.
But this also was kind of the end of this is like the director's jail for Oliver Stone. This is kind of his last big movie.
I'm sorry, this movie was $150 million.
Jesus. And it made like $30 million at the box office. Well, he says it did way better overseas. Apparently,
yeah, it made bank in Europe.
It was like both like
not to pay for itself.
Yeah, but it was both like critically and commercially did very well overseas.
Oh yeah, 3 times the amount of money it did here.
And apparently, like the DVD sales for this were pretty extraordinary too. Like I think it just said like 1 million, which doesn't seem like a much, but like hey, that's like $20 million, you know.
Well.
Or however that works out. You know, I'm not sure if rentals is included there, if that's just pure purchase of a DVD.
Don't know.
And then, so I mean, enough for them to come out with multiple versions of it. So the DVD must do well for whoever holds the rights to that. So.
Yeah, I mean, this was what I liked about Alexander was I didn't mind the acting. I some of it seemed a little weird. But I think it was just some of it was how the movie was made too, where it seemed like these guys really didn't get a chance to flourish and do these dramatic. Because there was like a couple times where it was like, oh, here comes a dramatic speech or something that's going to create some context, and then we're going to cut away to an eagle flying, or we're going to cut away to something else, which kind of a strange choice. The battle scenes were spectacular. The political intrigue could have been done a lot better because it didn't seem to really connect with the movie. It just seemed like boring scenes of interstitial dialogue between battles and dramatic moments
Yeah.
instead of being something that effectively moved the story along, which is weird for Oliver Stone. But he did write this based on a book too, so it was this followed this book pretty closely.
Well, there's another interesting thing where he talks about in this cut, which I don't know if I ever got in the viewing I had of it, but he's like talking about like how he traveled east and then he never went back home. Like that's
Yeah.
his journey. Like he just constantly searching new things. So like he never had a home to go back to, which is like an interesting like, huh? But like I at no point did I ever like contextualize that throughout this entire movie.
Right. I mean, I just knew that about Alexander the Great, but essentially it was because he was involved in risky, dangerous warfare the whole way and died.
Actually, there's some Alexander Great book I read that was kind of interesting. There's a part where I think they're somewhere in Egypt and they're like fighting an army that's just had like holed up in like its castle or whatever, and instead of just like trying to invade this castle or whatever, they just they spend all this time and redirect a river to basically to what's the opposite of to die of thirst essentially.
Oh yeah.
This whole city, and then they eventually they redirect a river so they can't get water, and then they surrender to the Alexander the Great.
Very dehydrated warriors.
But I was also like, that also took like 2 months for them to do that. But it was like at the end of the day, nobody died from them doing that.
That's true. Yeah, they just well, it's like the medieval battles, where they build the siege equipment outside the castle. Just, hold on, we'll be there in a minute. Talk, 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 talk. And all the trees are cut down. It's like, okay, now we're ready, because they had no way to move giant siege equipment effectively. They didn't have very big horses. But yeah, that's. But anyway, yeah, this movie was fine for me, but it wasn't like. It could have been better for the amount of talent that was poured into this. It just didn't flow very well.
Yeah. Well, it's once again he has a great cast, but I feel like he doesn't have like the B player. He doesn't have like a lot of there's no like John C. McGinley just hanging around, and like there's not a lot of those character actors.
John C. McGinley is a Greek like officer. But yeah, it was no one got to shine. Not even Anthony Hopkins, who was just like a bookend performance.
Yeah.
Even he seemed like kind of vaguely annoyed, like, what are we doing? And I've got this costume on, and he didn't seem to really like inhabit the character like he usually does.
But like this, like I mean, this is like something nowadays you would just like this would have been better as a TV series.
Yeah.
And maybe you could figure out how to do those giant battles with that budget. Because like these battles are, even though they're CGI assisted, like you think of the stuff at the time. Like I remember probably the first thing they started doing like these big battles where things are running at each other be like Phantom Menace, at least with the CGI stuff, and then they did it also in like the
Lord of the Rings.
But like before that, you had like the second Mummy movie where you had that.
Oh yeah,
where like it seemed cool at the time. You watch it now, it's like this is just like armies running at each other. This means nothing. Where I think here, like they did a lot of very specific things to like show off tactics, or like like a title would come on screens like the right flank and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this is interesting. And then but yeah, like I said, CGI assisted, but not completely. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings stuff was like probably done better, but that was like mostly CGI or some combination. But it was really well done.
Well, this movie could focus on the how horrible like that kind of hoplite warfare was back then. That's all up close and personal. I mean, that's just.
But also, I was like watching a YouTube video, and they're watching a clip from this movie called Waterloo. From 1970.
Yeah, it's one of my son's favorite movies.
And fucking like wow. Like they have this helicopter shot of just like this hundreds of cavalry. You have these guys boxed off in squares, just like, and there's like 10 of them, and it's like, Jesus Christ, I got 1,000 people, and it's like you just couldn't do that. I mean, the only way that probably happened because I think they used like actual Russian troops and like,
Yeah, they use Russians. Yeah.
and so like, and same thing like happened here is like you just convince a government to give you to have your army act like something for a day, and like you basically get them for free, and that's the only time you can get like that large of a cast to do things. Because nowadays it'd just be like it's too much of a cost and liability, just CGI it, and it kind of just feels empty nowadays. So, like like nowadays, yeah, it's like more John Wick, where you have like very specific small violence rather than like the large armies running at each other violence.
Yeah.
But you know that'll probably switch around too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. This movie was made in what, 2004?
I wanted to say 7, but I don't know.
It was 4. Could be wrong.
Maybe I think this recuts in 2014, so I don't think I have the original.
Yeah,
Release
2004.
Oh, 2000. Okay.
That's when it came out in theaters. So yeah, it's not one of those movies that's like, yeah, it's better than a lot of movies, but didn't live up to its promise. You know,
I mean, also, yeah. I mean, this is like Alexander is a really interesting character, and you talk about the like everything, because he like the way Oliver Stone talks him up in the commentary is like, well, he never lost a battle, and everywhere he touched was made richer because of him, and then when he died, it kind of just all fell apart.
yeah.
So it's like a very unique person. Like it's somebody who was real, that essentially lived a life of a Greek myth.
Yep.
Like, but it all happened.
The real guy. I forgot that. I was surprised to see, because I knew Colin Farrell was in this and a bunch of other people.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, I was surprised to see Val Kilmer.
And Christopher Lee was in there for a bit.
Yep, he was the famous guy, Aristotle.
Yeah.
Yep. And he explained the love between two men. When it's done for lust, it is a shame, but when it's done to share knowledge and wisdom, it's beautiful. I had all these 15-year-old kids, and you're like, ooh, okay. You know how he died, sir. But so it was, like I said, it's a fine movie if you got, if it's a period of time where you're not an expert and you don't know a lot about, which I'm neither. It was okay, but it just, for the kind of like information dense filmmaking that Oliver Stone can do, it's just the story did not really, it seemed to relate nothing. It's just like small conversations between huge battles.
Yeah.
And interpersonal conflicts that seemed way too dramatic. Didn't really have the backdrop.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I know it's a drama, and I know these are literally life and death situations that actually happened. But can you calm the fuck down?
Yeah. It seemed a little too. It's like everyone was acting like big A, and it's like I know you don't normally act like this, but God knows what that set.
And also kind of like a mix of like ridiculous dialogue and then like inspiring good dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every once in a while, this movie feels like Braveheart.
Yeah. And that's the sad thing about this movie is you really want to buy into it and enjoy the characters and share their adventures, but then half the time you're like pulling the brakes, like, well, what's going on again? Why? Hold on, time out. Let me go to the internet and see, like, why is this important? And
also, like, some of the battles that they really only kind of do two, but like, that first battle where you have like it's dusty and you see it from the air and you have like all these flanks moving around, and then it gets in close and dirty, and then you got like the more surreal one where they're fighting the elephants in a forest.
Yeah, that one seemed like an LSD trip.
Yeah. There's that really cool shot where he's riding his horse Bucephalus up against, it's like rearing up against the elephant that's rearing up, and it's like a really cool shot.
Yeah.
And then it,
But
like,
really, before and after that, it's a dirty battle in the woods.
yeah,
A bunch of guys that are covered with blood and mud, and there's no tactics. You're just fighting Indians in the woods, and I mean Indians from India when I say that.
or
War-
riding war elephants.
War, which is a cool concept. Very Lord of the Rings.
Also, I like Oliver Stone said that there were elephants in the battle in the first one, but he wanted to save that for the end. So
I like the cavalry camels that the Persians were using because the guy was hanging off the back with the arrow and the guy in front was driving. It's like, yeah, that could be kind of effective. I never thought of like camels as fighting beasts, but yeah, you could use them that way. Especially when it's like a mobile weapons platform that can fire stuff. You know, you're not just swinging a sword off of it.
as far as I know, I think the Ultimate Cut is better.
Yeah.
But also it gives more, like you're saying, like it doesn't have the movie you watch, the version you watch seemed to have no patience. And I think the one I watched does. But like I said, I didn't watch it to compare, so
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you, Nathan, that you need to see the Ultimate Cut after seeing the original. Like I think you're done with it for now.
Well, yeah, I've always been a fan of Oliver Stone's, but this is one I had not seen. Nor did I've ever seen
But-
Troy either. And
Yeah. I mean,
And I don't-
this is better than Troy, but
yeah.
Yeah. I also interesting, like, I think at some point, like, Baz Luhrmann was going to direct this movie with Leonardo DiCaprio as Alexander. And then-
Yeah. Oh, there were several. Let me look up. I have some trivia here about all the people that were cast as Alexander. Tom Cruise was one. Who was the other one?
They try
There
to
was
get
a
Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt seems to be like the obvious one. Did they ever try to get him for that? Like, I know he ended up doing Troy anyways, but
Yeah. So I think they. Oh, who else was there? Were some. They were going to go with more no-name people.
yeah.
No, I can't. I know Tom Cruise was one, and Angelina Jolie was supposed to play somebody else, and there were some other. They were like looking at some really Hollywood people, but they didn't really come together that way. And also, this was one of those movies where like Oliver Stone wanted to do this for years, and kind of the American studios had passed on this. So they're like, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a big. Can we get him on a McDonald's cup? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
This
it's
is a big
yeah,
draw in
R-
America.
I mean, yeah. Oliver Stone makes R-rated movies, and now it was coming up on the time where it's like, well, we can't justify the expensive R-rated movies anymore. So,
Yeah.
or at least $100 million R-rated movies.
Yeah, about the subject matter that people are vaguely familiar with. But maybe not interested in. I mean, it just goes to show, like, you can do this, which they try to pay an homage to history, or you can do the 300 and make $1 billion.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay.
Oh yeah,
Which
yeah,
is-
yeah. There was some comparisons that were drawn between this and that, and it's like, 300 was like a really cool stylistically at the time, and it's still probably a cool movie.
Yeah.
But like, they just filmed that shit in a studio with some green screen.
Oh, yeah.
The effort put in this movie is like you have to appreciate it. They did
Oh, yeah.
way more effort than, and that's not to decry what they did with 300. Like that was great, but it's also like of its time.
It was also based on a comic book, too.
Yeah, yeah. So they could
like-
steal things like, oh, it's already done for us. Like it's already storyboarded for us. We have to.
It also proves that Zack Snyder can actually make a movie.
Wait till the Snyder Cut comes out. Next
Actually,
month.
Watchmen is probably his best movie, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably on a technical level. Yeah. I mean,
But-
he just followed the story, but
Yeah, I think he had the right touch with the visuals and the
Yeah.
characters, and considering they weren't working with
I mean, yeah, he always does visuals very well. It's always just like he needs to pair up with a better writer than
Yeah.
himself and his wife.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as like crafting a film and how this film looked and the costuming and everything, it was all amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I also
But
like that, like how, like people like kept picking up scars and stuff. It's like, yeah, you would if you're fucking
Yeah.
fighting a giant battle and you're only like
People
23 years
swinging
old.
around, yeah. Well, I remember when I heard once like some of those giant they found giant Greek ruins that weren't the Acropolis or weren't like theaters, and for years and years and years they didn't know what they were. And they finally figured out they were sanatoriums for the Greek soldiers who just had their minds destroyed by this kind of warfare. Where you're just like cutting someone's jaw off or stabbing them through the face, hundreds of times. And yeah, it's a real gruesome kind of fighting because it's all spear. I mean, they had arrows, but they didn't have like the
Well, that was like the
long range ones.
the technical or the technological advantage of his army is they had the longer spears than everybody else did, and I think it was like bronze tipped or whatever. They had better spear ends.
Yeah.
So I think this is like one of the first like History Channel things I ever saw was about like, Alexander Great. This is like in '94 or something like that. So I was like 10 years old. And they show off the whole battle, how he chases off the one guy, I can't remember his name, the king, the Persian king.
Yeah.
And so that was like I appreciated that how they followed that in this movie. That was also why like they get to the end of Alexander's life or towards it, and it's like, and then his lover died of something, and it's like it was a guy. It's like, oh, he was gay. That was like just a big twist to me at my time in the '90s.
Darius, King Darius,
Okay.
was the Persian king, and that was that great battle in the scene is the Battle of Gaugamela.
Okay.
That's the big one. Yep. So it's basically the same bad guys as in 300, but
and why that battle was like so extraordinary is because they were so outnumbered. It was just like a pure tactical win, essentially.
I mean, the Romans stole a lot of their battle ideas from Alexander the Great and the Greeks in general. But the Romans took that phalanx formation a little further because they actually had the shields that were body covering, and they had the spears that were designed to break off as horses charged their infantry instead of just staying stout and breaking the guy's arm. But yeah, those are all those tactics still resonate. Just because Alexander was famous for those infantry charges where he split the enemy's forces, or not infantry, cavalry charges where he split the enemy's forces, and then his infantry came in between them, and they could divide one giant army into two smaller ones. Yeah. He did a lot of shit like that, which was very hard to coordinate with like horns and messengers. Yeah. Like you're not on the radio, like chef, Yeah,
I was like the like Oliver Stone was talking about, like when he's giving like the pep talk to his soldiers, and like he knows like all individual ones throughout the thing, but like it's like, remember, he's like, okay, this front line of soldiers, that's a mile long, and not everybody can hear him. Imagine coordinating this is a disaster and a nightmare.
Yeah, no one's pulling out their iPad for like, or whatever they call that now, the battle space, however they do that. But again, also, you don't have mass troop formations anymore either. Yeah.
Well, I'll just nuke that area. Oh, they're all dead now.
Well, I was like watching something once about the last great tank battle. It was the last time Blitzkrieg was used. And of course, it was by us. It was in the first Gulf War. It was that Battle of 76 Easting, where they just kept charging at the enemy tanks. And it was one of those, the Persian Gulf War really was a confidence booster. It was like 1,500 Iraqis died. One American got killed because he got thrown off the back of a truck. It's like, well, Jesus Christ. But yeah, that was like the last massed armor engagement.
Yeah, because like the second Iraq War, they used maneuver warfare, which is basically like, hey, what if both armies were up for 72 hours, and you just kept coming at them. It's like, you mean we're gonna throw Humvees at a tank? It's like, well, that won't work. It's like, doesn't matter. Just just keeps them awake. They're gonna break eventually. We have the advantage, and it's like that's where you got like Generation Kill. Where you have like the tip of the spear is special forces guys in open top Humvees, just like just keep moving, just keep moving. It doesn't matter if we're winning or losing.
Yeah, that was what did they put on the? They put them on the Bradleys and the tow missiles.
Yeah,
That you could destroy a Russian tank with one of those pretty effectively at range too, but the enemy would sometimes interpret it as a tank because they wouldn't see where it came from. It's like, oh, something destroyed a tank, it must be another tank because it wasn't artillery. It came in fast, and yeah, those were like terrifying weapons. But it was just a guy in a Jeep firing a missile, 200-pound missile or something like that. Weighs a lot, I know that. But yeah. But anyway, for Alexander the Great to maneuver his troops like this, like that was amazing in itself. I know in the Lord of the Rings movies they always try to pay an homage to like they have like the guys how they shift the battles and stuff. They got guys with a bunch of flags or blowing horns, but it's like hundreds of people. Which that's like interesting. It's like, oh yeah, they're throwing some actual tactics into the story. But yeah, so, like I said, there's some spectacular stuff in here, and you know that.
But yeah, this is also probably, I mean, financially his greatest failure, and this is the biggest movie he ever got to do, and probably will ever get to do. So.
Yep, you won't see this again. Or anything like it. Or maybe you will, who knows? Maybe America
at
will
some
just
point, But it'll just be all CGI.
Yeah.
Which is fine. No, the CGI will get better, but
you won't be able to tell the difference.
Just appreciate all the practical effects that went into this movie.
Yeah. And I appreciate some of the acting too.
Yeah.
I think they tried.
I think it's inconsistent, but I think there's good stuff there. So. Yeah,
well, I think you could. I'm no expert on acting or film criticism for that matter, but in this movie, it seemed like there was some like the actors were straining at some point.
I think the thing that Colin Farrell, like, he's just doing his accent. He's not trying to affect anything. So like, that's probably a good choice. But even if like, what he's saying is kind of ridiculous, I think like he brings a passion to it, which I think that's what like carries it essentially.
Yeah.
It's like he believes it. Like even if it sounds ridiculous, like at least his character and him believes it. So.
Yeah, it doesn't. His accent didn't throw me. It's just some of the dialogue threw me. I mean, some of it was so weird with Val Kilmer. It's like, are they grinning at each other? What is he trying to say? Or was Philip of Macedonia that random a person? Seemed like an alcoholic. And they were the wino drunks back then. You had to drink a lot to get that drunk back then. That's why everyone lived to the ripe old age of 30. All right, well, that's all I got for this week.
All right.
Well, this week for the American Greed Factory podcast, this is Nathan.
This is Conlon. Goodbye, America.